Action. Alrighty. What's up, guys? This video is brought to you by water. Not really, but...
Water? Okay.
Stay hydrated. Now.
You shook the phone.
No. Alright, listen. This is a history assignment, so let's get into it. Good afternoon, lads and lasses. Welcome to the Fluffcast. Today, we will be discussing Federalist and anti-federalist documents. Such documents include Brutus Number 1, Federalists 10, 51, and 70. So, let's get into it.
So, to start things off here,
Louder.
we are
There you go.
going with the Federalist side, because the Constitution's good, and we'll get into that a little later.
That's your line.
I said it.
Oh, yeah, huh?
Just, yeah.
Water. Eat fresh. All right. First, we have Brutus Number 1. Brutus Number 1 is the main objective is to go against the Constitution, and it was the dissolution of the sovereignty of the states to form one great republic. Count them. One great republic.
Brutus believed that having this sovereignty of the states, this popular sovereignty in the states would nullify the states' power, specifically the smaller states, and make it so that Congress was unfair and more tailored towards a lot of the larger states. And Brutus did not like this very much. On to the next document.
All right. Well, one last thing with that document, he thought that it would the Congress would be able to repeal state funding laws. That's an important piece. But also, the next document was written by James Madison. This was a Federalist Number 10. And Federalist Number 10 states that the defending arguments for the republic that was set by the Constitution, it also states how many were against and criticized the Constitution for making the government too large and making the people unheard. These concerns were made every anti-federalist worry for the state of the nation.
Next document is Federalist 51. This one is also very important, as most of them are. This one specifically being important for the fact that it is bringing in the idea of checks and balances that runs very proudly in our government today. It basically goes over what is needed for proper checks and balances and the way it needs to function in our government in order to make sure that one certain power doesn't take over and just start running the government by itself.
Yeah, and also there's another very important Federalist document that we mentioned earlier, which is Federalist Number 70. And Federalist 70 supports the second article of the Constitution by saying that we need an executive branch in our government in order to balance out the powers. The great Alexander Hamilton said, and I quote, "A unitary executive is necessary to ensure accountability in the government, enable the president to defend against legislative encroachments on his power. As we now know, the executive branch is needed to ensure all the things that Mr. Hamilton said." And yeah.
So what these documents have to do with the making of the Constitution and the way our country is run today affects a lot, because a lot of these documents affected the actual voting process and the different ideas of the way people, when they were figuring out the Constitution, decided the way things would work on a very basic level, and that kind of lays the groundstone for the way our government works today in a way that the Articles of Confederation never could have. And Brutus Number 1 was while the anti-federalists didn't have a lot of different things, Brutus number 1 was one of them, and one of the more vastly important ones, because it was about the issue that was causing the Constitution to take so much longer in the process to go through, and what brought us to a lot of our major systems and the reason we run the way we run in a lot of ways.
My turn? Alrighty. The Federalist 10, 51, and 70 were prime documentations for the feelings of the Federalist side of the USA. Federalist 10 was a powerful deed that America needed at that time because it made the government appear bigger, and while it also promoted the people's sides of the story, even though the anti-federalists couldn't see that. Federalist 51 was a grand article that showed the importance of checks and balances in our government, which is obviously very important to this day. And a significant tome in the era of the Federalists was Federalist 70. Federalist 70 pronounced the vital necessity for an executive branch, and as we can see again today, we need the executive branch because without it, we wouldn't have nearly as many checks and balances on our government.
So, I believe that's going to wrap it up. So, as we stated earlier, we are on with the Federalist side because the Constitution is very important and sets up our government today. And if we had kept the Articles of Confederation or gone with a lot of the rules for that were planned upon before, our government wouldn't be the same as it is today and wouldn't function as properly as it does today. And at the very least, the Constitution laid a very good point of reference for the way the future is run and needs to be run in order to work effectively and have our government go into the long term past a lot of the governments of ancient times. And that's it.
All right, well, guys, that was all the time we had today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Fluffcast. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next video. Remember, I'm Dylan, this is Aiden, and this video was brought to you by water and our history teacher, Mr. Porter. Thank you, Mr. Porter. This was fun. Bye, guys.